16 to 35 is a popular focal range for wide-angle underwater photography, and today I'm going to walk through assembling the Sony 16 to 35mm f2.8 Mark I lens. If you're shooting with the updated Mark II version of this lens, these are not the products that you'll need. First off, we're going to start with the lens itself, and the first thing we're going to do is add an anti-reflection sticker to the front. To do so is pretty simple. You just remove the sticker from the piece of paper, and it's easiest if you just bend it backwards in the middle like so, and then stick it down on top of the white lettering of the lens. Everything should fall into place, and use your finger to smooth out any bumps. This will not affect the actual image and just helps with reflections. In the end, it should look something like this. Next, we're going to assemble the 5509.16 zoom gear. This zoom gear will come with pads, and those are also easy to assemble, just like the sticker. Peel off the piece of paper and bend it in half, just like that. And on the middle of each side of the clamp, apply the foam. And it'll look exactly like this. Next, we're going to slide the zoom clamp onto the lens, and to start, you're always going to want to make sure that your lens is in autofocus, so just make sure you change this switch to AF. And then we're going to apply the clamp so that these two tabs are facing towards the camera body or the back of the lens. It's easiest if you line up the tabs with this white dot on the lens, and just walk the clamp all the way up, and you want to sit kind of at the top of the zoom ring. This will allow the lens to fall all the way down into the housing. And you can see how that clamp is lined up with the white dot. That'll also just make it easier to line everything up when we're putting it inside the housing. All right, from here, we're gonna put the lens to the side and draw our attention to the housing itself. And using the included zoom gear retainer tool, we're going to take off the zoom gear retainer. And just flip over the housing to remove the dust cap. And we're going to drop in the zoom gear. And then just replace the zoom gear retainer the same way you took it out, just by turning it back and locking it. Doesn't need to be super tight, just make sure the zoom gear isn't moving. All right, now we're gonna move the body cap, and you wanna line up these tabs with the white dot. Again, this will just make it much easier to attach the lens. Then we're gonna grab our lens, remove the back cap, find your white dot, and simply bayonet the lens on. And you'll hear it click into place. From here, we can test the zoom functionality, make sure everything's turning right, nothing's loose or slipping, and this looks good. So we can move on to the port extensions and the dome port. For the Mark I version of this lens, you'll need a 50mm and a 28mm port extension. Before we put these port extensions together, we want to add a little bit of the included Ikelite lube to the O-rings, and this will help everything just slide together. Just a little bit on your forefinger and thumb, and just lubricate the O-ring. And we'll do that again for the other port extension. All right, right, when you look at the port extension, you'll notice that there are 3 thumb screws as well as 3 pockets that correspond with those 3 thumb screws. You'll want to make sure that all of your thumb screws are backed out from the inside diameter on each of the port extensions. And you'll also want to feel around this to make sure there isn't any hair or debris that will affect the seal. From here, you'll just want to line up that top pocket with the corresponding thumb screw in the other port extension and slide them together. Then tighten down each thumb screw. If you feel any resistance and tighten these down, you might not have lined up the pockets correctly, so just back it out and try again. And these don't need to be super tight, just hand tight, no tools required. Next, we're going to go back to the housing, and you'll see that the port mount on the housing has the same pockets as the extensions do. So before we put the port extensions onto the housing, we're also going to lubricate that O-ring. Same thing, a little bit of Ikelite lube, and just run it around the O-ring. Then we're going to grab our port extensions again and make sure that all the thumb screws are backed out. The sealing surface is clean. And we're going to align this top thumb screw with the pocket at the top of the housing. You can turn a little bit to align it properly and then tighten down all 3 of the thumb screws. Again, if you feel any resistance, back them out and realign. All right, now we're going to move on to the dome port. And for this setup, we're going to be using the 75340 full 8-inch dome port. Same thing as before, we're going to make sure that all 3 thumb screws are backed out of the inside diameter, as well as making sure that the sealing surface is clean of any hair and debris. You'll notice on the dome port that one of the 3 thumb screws corresponds with a shade. There are 2 shades. The one thumb screw that corresponds with the shade will be our top. So on the housing, line up that top shade, the top of the housing, and pocket, and just drop it on. And then tighten down all 3 thumb screws. One last time, check and make sure that you have full zoom capability, and we still do, which is great. You've just successfully assembled the zoom gear for the Sony 16-35 f2.8 Mark I lens. From here, I would definitely put a vacuum on the housing, ideally 24 hours or the night before your dive, but 10-15 minutes before also works. If you have any questions, you can drop us a comment down below or shoot us an email at ikelite@ikelite.com.